You didn't arrive here by accident. Something in the weave of your life has brought you to this exact moment. Whether you're sitting in a quiet room with the afternoon sun on your skin, or you're carrying the weight of 1,000 racing thoughts, this is not random. This is a point of alignment, a meeting place of frequencies, where your own consciousness has called you home. For years, maybe decades, you've been on a quest. You've read the books, listened to the teachings, filled journals with your reflections. You've sat in meditation, whispered affirmations into the stillness, visualized a brighter future until your mind was exhausted from holding the picture. You've walked through seasons of light and seasons of shadow, hoping that just beyond the next bend, you'd find the answer. And yet, when you look back, you see something unexpected. The path never really led you to a final destination. It circled you back here, back to yourself. The surroundings may look the same, but you are not the same. It's like returning to the home you grew up in and realizing the walls haven't changed, but your eyes now see the space differently. There's a reason for that. What you thought was the final test was never a trial you had to pass in order to prove your worthiness. It wasn't about meeting some cosmic standard or demonstrating that you've learned enough, healed enough, become pure enough. No, the so-called final test is simply the moment you lay down the idea that there's still something to prove. It's the threshold you cross when you stop chasing the answer and start living as if you are the answer. I know, the mind resists that. It wants to make awakening into a summit to be climbed, a riddle to be solved, a skill to be mastered. But consciousness, the real you, doesn't play by those rules. It doesn't live in the realm of almost there or not yet enough. Consciousness is here, always here. The only thing that ever changes is whether you recognize it. Think of it like this. You've been standing in the middle of a river, searching desperately for water. You've been scooping it up in your hands, rushing from one bank to the other, certain that somewhere upstream it will be cleaner, clearer, better. And then one day, without fanfare, you stop. You feel the current around you. You see the sunlight bouncing off the surface, and you realize you've been immersed in what you were looking for all along. That's what happens when you reach this point. The searching quiets, the grasping relaxes, not because you've given up, but because you've finally let in what has always been here. You stop measuring your progress by how high your vibration is, or how perfectly your mind behaves, or how closely your life matches a vision board. You start to see that there is no distance between you and the thing you've been trying to become. When I say this, I don't mean you'll suddenly live without challenges. Life will still bring its storms, but you will meet them differently. You'll meet them from the ground of being, instead of from the restless scramble to fix yourself. You'll stop approaching your own consciousness like a tool you have to master, and instead, you'll rest in it as the truest part of who you are. And in that rest, a strange thing happens. Reality begins to rearrange itself. Not because you've found the perfect manifestation technique or finally said the right words to the universe, but because you've stopped interrupting the natural flow. You've stopped swimming upstream against your own life. Opportunities start arriving without you forcing them. Relationships take on a deeper tone without you pushing for it. The very fabric of your days starts to feel different, lighter, more open, not because the outer world has suddenly turned perfect, but because you're no longer holding it hostage to your expectations. It's like taking off a pair of glasses you didn't realize were tinted. Everything looks different, not because the world has changed, but because your perception has. This is what it means to walk through the door of the final test. It's not about passing. It's about releasing the idea that there was ever anything to pass. It's about stepping into the knowing that the life you were chasing is already here, in seed form, in the stillness underneath all your striving. So here you are, not at the end of your journey, but at the beginning of a different kind of journey, one that doesn't require you to run after yourself anymore, one where you're not climbing towards some imagined summit, but letting the mountain rise within you. And maybe, just maybe, you can feel it already. A quiet shift, a deep exhale, the sense that you can finally set your bags down, not because you've reached the finish line, but because you realize there was never a race in the first place. That's the invitation this moment holds for you. Not to do more, not to fix more, not to prove more, but to live as if you are already what you were seeking, because you are. 1. Living from your natural state. There comes a day when you stop chasing after yourself, when you realize you are not a puzzle to be solved or a broken thing to be fixed, and in that moment, life softens. I've seen it in my own journey. For years, I woke each morning with a list running in my head of what I needed to do, to fix, to improve, just to feel like I was enough. Every action was a transaction if I meditate long enough. Maybe I'll be calmer. If I read the right book, maybe I'll be wiser. If I say the perfect words, maybe life will finally open its doors to me. But all that striving carried a hidden message. You are not complete yet. It was like building a house but never moving in. Always convinced there was one more wall to paint, one more chair to buy, before I could call it home. Then, something shifted. I can't tell you it was a lightning bolt, or a single dramatic moment. It was quieter than that, like the slow melt of winter into spring. I began to see that every breath I took was already the life I'd been trying to create. Every ordinary moment, washing dishes, hearing a bird call in the distance, the way the sunlight pooled on the floor, was already a complete expression of consciousness. When you live from your natural state, action doesn't disappear. You still do things, make choices, express yourself, but the root of those actions changes. They're no longer born from a place of lack, from the belief that I need to do this so I can finally be okay. Instead, they rise naturally, like a tree growing new leaves. Because it is a tree, it's the difference between moving because you're being chased and moving because you're dancing. This is why I say that creativity, when it's rooted in your natural state, feels like play. You're no longer forcing the river to flow. You're floating with its current, curious to see where it bends next. And the strange, almost magical truth is that when you stop trying to make life fill the emptiness itself dissolves. What's left is space, not the cold space of loneliness, but the open space of possibility. I remember an old friend once telling me, when you stop gripping so hard, life finally has room to take your hand. I didn't understand it then. I do now. The more I stopped trying to fix or prove myself, the more life seemed to meet me halfway. Opportunities appeared without my pushing. People showed up who felt like they'd been walking toward me for years. The timing of things became almost suspiciously perfect, like a song whose notes had been arranged long before I knew I would be listening. And here's the quiet miracle: you don't lose ambition. You don't lose passion. You simply lose the desperation that used to hold those things hostage. You start doing because you love doing, not because you need the doing to save you. Think of it like a garden. When you live from lack, you plant seeds as if your life depends on them sprouting tomorrow. You hover over the soil, measuring every millimeter, tugging at the shoots to make them grow faster. And in your impatience, you sometimes harm what you're trying to help. But when you live from your natural state, you plant because you enjoy the act of planting. You water because you love the smell of wet earth. You watch the sprouts appear when they're ready, and somehow, they seem to grow stronger, taller, healthier than they ever did before. Living from your natural state is not about ignoring life's challenges. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about meeting what is, whether it's joy or grief, clarity or confusion, from the deep knowing that none of it can take away your wholeness. You stop asking every situation to validate your worth. You stop treating every interaction as a test of whether you're there yet. When someone criticizes you, you hear it, but you don't collapse under it. When plans fall apart, You feel the disappointment. But you don't build a story that says, "This always happens to me." When good things arrive, you enjoy them without gripping them so tightly that you strangle the joy out of them. This is freedom. Not the freedom of having everything you want, but the freedom of knowing you can meet whatever comes and still be yourself. And it's here, in this space, that life begins to flow toward you in ways you never expected. Not because you've mastered some secret technique, but because you're no longer standing in the way. The current was always moving toward you. You've simply stopped building dams made of self-doubt, fear, and the endless not yet. I think of it like a gentle tide. You don't command the ocean to bring the waves. You just stop running from the shore. And here's the beautiful part: once you taste this way of being, you realize that nothing in the external world has to change for you to feel at home in your life. The circumstances might shift, they often do, but the foundation doesn't depend on them. You can be in a quiet room or a noisy street, surrounded by friends or sitting alone, and still feel that steady hum beneath it all. It's the hum of your own being, the hum that was there before you started searching, the hum that will be there long after you stop. Living from your natural state is not a technique, it's not a trick to get more of what you want. It's the moment you understand that you are what you were wanting all along. And once you see that, you can stop chasing and start creating, not because you need the creation to complete you, but because creating is what life does when it's free. So as you hear these words, maybe take a breath and let it land. You are already whole. You are already here. And from this place, you can let life meet you without fear, without hurry, without the old weight of needing to prove anything at all. 2. Stepping out of the need to prove. There comes a quiet turning point in life, one that doesn't arrive with fireworks or applause. It often slips in during the spaces between your thoughts, in the stillness, after you've exhausted yourself trying to be enough. It's the moment you stop living like the world is your jury. For so many years, I carried an invisible measuring stick inside me. Every conversation, every achievement, every mistake, all of it ran up against that stick. And without realizing it, I had placed the hands that held it into the crowd family, in friends, strangers, even people I didn't like. I needed them to tell me I was doing okay. I needed their nods, their smiles, their approval to believe I was on the right track. But living that way is exhausting. It's like trying to walk with a mirror strapped to your face, forever looking at yourself through someone else's reflection. And because every person sees you through the lens of their own wounds, dreams, and limitations, that reflection is never the full truth of who you are. The need to prove yourself might start small: a desire to please your parents, to fit in at school, to be liked by the people you admire. But if it goes unchecked, it becomes a thread woven through every choice you make. You pick careers that impress rather than fulfill. You say yes to relationships that look good on the outside but starve your soul on the inside. You measure your worth by numbers, income, titles, followers, likes, as if a higher count could ever fill the empty space inside. I learned the hard way that chasing approval is like drinking salt water. The more you swallow, the thirstier you become. There is never a point when you feel full because external validation is designed to be temporary. People's attention shifts, their tastes change, and when your self-worth is tied to their approval, your sense of self rises and falls like a small boat in a storm. Something in me broke. One day, not in a tragic way, but in the way a shell breaks, to let the bird inside finally see the sky. I had been bending myself into shapes that didn't feel like me just to keep the peace, to be liked, to be seen as good. And yet, even after all that bending, I realized I still didn't feel safe. I still didn't feel free. So I let go. Letting go didn't mean I stopped caring about people. It meant I stopped giving them the power to decide my worth. It meant I learned to stand in a room, be fully myself, and allow people to stay or leave without it shaking my foundation. And here's what happens when you step out of the need to prove. The people and opportunities in your life begin to shift. Some connections dissolve not in anger or drama, but like leaves drifting away in autumn. They've served their season, and it's time for them to fall. At first, that can feel like loss. Your mind might panic, whispering that you're being abandoned. But if you can sit through that discomfort, you'll see what's really happening. The space is being cleared for something more aligned. The relationships that remain or that enter in this new season feel different. They're not built on performance. You don't have to wear a mask or keep a running checklist of how to please them. They meet you in your truth, not in your presentation. And because of that, they have a depth and a softness you may never have known before. It's the same with opportunities. When you're living to prove something, you'll say yes to things that drain you because they make you look good on paper. But when you drop that need, you start saying no without guilt. And in the quiet that follows a no, you open the door for the right yes to arrive, the one that fits who you are, not who you're trying to be. I remember once turning down a job that, on the surface, looked like everything I should want. It was prestigious, high-paying, and everyone told me I'd be a fool to walk away. But deep inside, something in me knew if I said yes, I'd be selling a piece of my soul for applause I didn't actually need. Saying no felt terrifying at first, and yet, in that empty space, something unexpected happened. Within months, a new opportunity appeared, one that was quieter, more aligned, and gave me a sense of peace that the other never could have bought. Stepping out of the need to prove is really an act of faith. Faith that the truest version of you will draw the right people and possibilities without having to contort yourself. Faith that you can disappoint someone and still be okay. Faith that you can walk away from what doesn't honor you and not be left with nothing. It's like setting down a heavy suitcase you've been carrying for years. At first, your arms still feel the ghost of its weight. You might even reach for it out of habit. But as days pass, you realize how much lighter you move. You notice the flowers on the side of the road, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the way your breath feels deeper. That's what happens when you no longer drag the burden of needing to prove. You finally have the space and energy to live. And here's the most beautiful part: when you stop trying to prove your worth, you actually become more magnetic. Not because you've perfected yourself, but because authenticity is rare, and people can feel it. They're drawn to someone who is comfortable in their own skin, not the polished, over-rehearsed skin, but the real, weathered, beautifully imperfect one. You start to see that life isn't a stage where you have to perform for an audience. It's a garden, and your only job is to grow as yourself. The ones meant for you will find their way to your shade, and the rest will keep walking, and you'll let them. With love, when you no longer seek approval as your fuel, your relationships, your work, your entire life begin to reflect the truth of who you are. Not the version you've been selling to the world, but the one you've always been underneath. And in that reflection, there is freedom. 3. You are the field of consciousness. There's a moment, if you sit still long enough, when you begin to sense it, this subtle yet undeniable truth: you are not simply standing on the outside of life, watching it unfold like a movie on a screen. You are the screen. You are the light that projects the images. You are the story being told. Quantum physics has a way of pointing to this. Even though it uses the language of science instead of poetry, it tells us that the observer and the observed are not separate, that the act of observing changes what is observed. And the deeper you go into this truth, the more it dissolves the familiar lines you've been taught, lines between me and life, self and other, inside and outside. You begin to realize you're not an individual self moving through an indifferent world. You are the field in which the world appears. You are the consciousness in which every sound, every color, every breath arises. When I first heard this, I wanted to believe it, but my mind didn't know what to do with it. I kept imagining myself as a separate person, somehow connected to this larger field like a phone connected to the internet. But that's not quite it. It's not that you're connected to the field, it's that you are the field. Just as the ocean is not connected to the waves, it is the waves you are not connected to consciousness. You are consciousness, taking the temporary form of a human life. It's like playing a role in a play you wrote yourself, but forgetting you're the author while you're on stage. You get caught up in the drama, the struggles, the triumphs of the character, until a moment of stillness comes, and something in you remembers. You see the lights above the stage. You hear the quiet hum of the audience's breath. And you remember, this is all happening inside me. From the human perspective, this can feel strange, almost impossible. We've been raised to believe we're small beings trying to survive in a vast, external universe. But when you start to feel yourself as the field, something changes. The fear softens. The sense of separation loses its sharp edges. Imagine walking through your day knowing you are not moving through the world, but that the world is moving through you like clouds passing across the sky that you are. That doesn't mean you control every detail. The clouds have their own dance, but you know they cannot harm the sky. They may shade the light for a while, but they never touch the vastness of what you are. I remember sitting by a lake one autumn afternoon. The water was still, like glass, reflecting the fiery leaves above it. A gust of wind rippled the surface, scattering the reflection into 1,000 fragments. And then, as quickly as it came, the wind passed, and the lake became still again. In that moment, it was so clear to me I am not the ripples, not the momentary distortions. I am the lake itself, the still, deep presence that holds every reflection, no matter how it changes. When you know yourself as the field, life's ups and downs don't stop happening, but your relationship to them transforms. You stop trying to clutch at the good moments, fearing they'll slip away, because you know they arise from you. You stop fighting the bad moments, trying to push them out of existence, because you know they too will pass across your surface. You understand that you are not defined by the temporary patterns on your waters. This realization also changes the way you create. So much of what we call manifestation comes from the assumption that we, as small, separate selves, must somehow manipulate the world out there to give us what we want. But if you are the field, there is no out there. Every possibility already exists within you. Creation is not about pulling something into your life. It's about letting the part of the field that holds that possibility come into focus. It's like tuning a radio. The station you hear doesn't come from somewhere far away. It's already here, in the air around you. You don't chase it down the street. You simply adjust the dial until it's clear. In the same way, you don't chase experiences or outcomes. You align your awareness with them, and they reveal themselves. This is why struggle becomes less necessary. When you see yourself as separate from life, you think you must push and pull and fight to get what you need. But when you know you are life, you realize that what is meant for you doesn't have to be forced. It unfolds through you, as naturally as your own breath. Living as the field also deepens your connection to others. If you and I are not separate, then your joy is my joy. Your pain is my pain. This isn't a poetic metaphor. It's the actual structure of reality. When you comfort another, you are soothing yourself. When you judge another, you are cutting into your own skin. Compassion stops being a moral choice and becomes the most natural expression of knowing who you are. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this recognition is the way it frees you from the constant need to hold everything together. The field doesn't strain to keep the planet spinning. The tides moving, the seasons changing. That rhythm is already built into its nature. And when you know yourself as the field, you stop gripping so tightly to control life. You let go of the reins not because you've given up, but because you've realized the horse was always carrying you exactly where you needed to go. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means your actions arise from a deeper place, not from fear or the need to prove, but from the quiet joy of participating in your own unfolding. You speak because there's something in you that wants to be said. You create because there's a beauty in you that longs to take form. You love because love is the natural vibration of the field you are. And maybe, as you hear this, there's a part of you that's already felt it, that spaciousness behind your thoughts, that stillness beneath the noise. That is you. That is the field. And the more you rest there, the more you'll see that nothing in your life is happening to you. It's all happening through you. As you. 4. Difficulties as mirrors of trust. There was a time when every challenge felt like a verdict. If something went wrong, I thought it meant I had failed to prepare enough, to think ahead enough, to be strong enough. Each setback felt like a personal indictment, a confirmation of the fear that maybe I wasn't cut out for the life I wanted. But with time, through enough storms, enough nights where the horizon felt impossibly far, I began to see something different. Difficulties weren't here to condemn me. They weren't cosmic punishments or signs that I'd taken the wrong path. They were mirrors, and in those mirrors, I could see exactly how much I trusted the truth of who I am. You can only know the depth of a bridge's strength by walking across it in a storm. In the same way, you only really know the depth of your trust when the ground beneath you shifts. It's easy to speak of faith when the skies are clear, when the bank account is full, when the people you love are safe and close. But when life changes the script, when the letter arrives with bad news, when the door you counted on suddenly closes, when the familiar dissolves, something more is revealed. These are the moments that whisper, "Do you still trust?" Trust, I've learned, is not a warm, fuzzy feeling you keep in your pocket for the good days. It's a way of standing in life. It's the choice to root yourself in the knowing that you are more than your current circumstance, that the field you are part of is not random or cruel, but deeply intelligent. When you meet difficulty with curiosity rather than resistance, you create space. Resistance shrinks you. It locks your body, tightens your breath, narrows your vision until you can only see the problem in front of you. Curiosity does the opposite. It opens you. It asks questions like, what is this showing me? Where is this pointing me? What part of me is ready to grow right now? I remember a winter when everything seemed to fall apart at once. Work slowed to a trickle. A relationship I thought would last forever ended suddenly. Even my health demanded I stop and rest when I most wanted to move forward. My first instinct was to fight, to push harder at work, to repair what had broken, to get back to normal as fast as possible. But every push met a wall. It wasn't until I stopped fighting and began listening that something shifted. I started asking, what if this isn't punishment? What if this is preparation? And in that question, I felt my shoulders drop. The panic softened. The space between each breath widened. From that softer place, I began to notice things I couldn't see before: the friend who showed up just when I needed a conversation that wasn't about fixing anything. The way quiet mornings gave me room to explore ideas I'd never considered. The way my body, once rested, felt more alive and willing than it had in years. None of these gifts would have arrived if I'd bulldozed my way through the difficulty. Challenges, I realized, are not detours away from life. They are life. They are the raw, unpolished moments where we get to meet ourselves without the makeup of certainty. And in those moments, we can either retreat into fear or lean into trust. Trust doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It doesn't mean ignoring the pain or skipping over grief. It means letting the pain and the grief exist without letting them define the whole picture. It's like standing on the shore during a storm and remembering that the ocean is more than its waves, that beneath the turbulence, there is still a vast, calm depth. And sometimes, trust is not even about believing everything will turn out exactly as you want. It's about knowing that you will meet whatever comes, and that you will still be you. That no matter how the details shift, the essence of you is steady. This is why difficulties are such clear mirrors. They reflect not only the strength of our trust, but also the places where we still doubt, where we still grip too tightly. And seeing those places is not failure. It's an invitation. It's the universe pointing to the knots in the rope and asking, are you ready to loosen this? When you meet challenges from this place, possibilities you couldn't imagine begin to emerge. A job loss might lead to work that actually fits your soul. A heartbreak might clear space for a love that meets you in your truth. A period of uncertainty might sharpen your awareness, making you more awake to the beauty in small, ordinary things. This doesn't mean you'll enjoy every hardship. Some storms are harsh, some leave marks, but even then, if you let them, they carve you into a shape that can hold more light. So the next time difficulty comes, and it will pause before you label it as failure, notice what rises in you: the urge to control, to run, to hide. Then, if you can, take a breath and ask yourself, what if I trusted this moment? Even just a little. You might find that trust is not a grand leap, but a series of small choices: choosing to breathe instead of panic, to listen instead of react, to take one step instead of collapsing at the size of the road ahead. Over time, those choices build a bridge inside you. And one day, you'll look back and realize the bridge has been carrying you all along. When you can see difficulties as mirrors of trust, life stops feeling like a test you're constantly at risk of failing. It starts feeling like a conversation, one where every word, even the hard ones, is part of a deeper story. And in that story, you are not the victim of the plot. You are the field in which the plot unfolds. 5. The power of presence. There is a kind of stillness that doesn't arrive because you force the mind to be quiet. It comes when you simply stop wandering so far from where you are. For much of my life, I thought being present was a skill you practiced, like learning a language or playing an instrument. 10 minutes of meditation in the morning, maybe a few mindful breaths during the day, and I'd check the box. Present, done. But I didn't realize that presence isn't something you clock in and out of. It's not an exercise you add to your to-do list. It's the natural state of consciousness when it's not tangled in the past or leaning anxiously into the future. When you're present, the moment is complete. You don't need it to be different for you to be okay. You don't need to drag yesterday's mistakes into it or borrow tomorrow's fears to fill it. The moment stands on its own like a flower that's perfect simply because it exists. But the truth is, most of us live as though the present moment is just a hallway to get somewhere else. We rush through it on our way to the real life that we believe will begin when we've solved all our problems. We treat presence as a pause between the important moments rather than seeing it as the foundation for all moments. I used to wake up in the morning already thinking of the evening and go to bed replaying the morning. I'd miss entire days because I was too busy remembering or anticipating, and in that way of living, even small challenges felt enormous because I wasn't meeting them as they were. I was meeting them with the weight of every similar challenge from the past and the fear of every imagined challenge in the future. Presence changes that. When you are here, truly here, you begin to see that everything in front of you is just a temporary shape consciousness has taken on. Even the things you call problems are only costumes. The financial worry, the argument with a friend, the uncertainty about what comes next, they are all forms, shifting and dissolving like clouds against the sky. And the sky that's you remains untouched. This doesn't mean you deny what's happening. It means you see it clearly, without adding the extra layers of story that make it heavier than it is. A difficult conversation is just a difficult conversation, not a sign that you're unlovable. A slow month in your work is just a slow month, not proof that your life is falling apart. When you're present, you deal with what's actually here, not with the ghosts of what's been or the shadows of what might be. I remember a time when I was waiting for some test results from the doctor. My mind kept running ahead, creating all the worst-case scenarios it could invent. Every time I followed those thoughts, my body tensed, my breath shortened, and my fear grew. But when I brought myself back just to the sound of my breath, the feel of the chair under me, the sight of the afternoon light moving across the wall, there was no fear. Not in that moment. In that moment, there was just me, breathing, and that was enough. That's the power of presence. It doesn't erase uncertainty, but it changes your relationship to it. You stop needing the future to hurry up and reassure you. You stop needing the past to give you permission to move on. You find that here, in this exact moment, you are already okay. And here's the part that surprised me. Most presence isn't passive. It's not sitting in silence doing nothing. In fact, when you are present, you respond more fully to life. You notice the things you used to overlook, the look in someone's eyes that tells you they need comfort, the small opportunity that passes by quietly but could change everything, the beauty in a simple cup of tea. You act not out of habit or fear, but out of clarity. The mind will tell you that the present moment is boring, that it's too simple to be the answer. It will lure you back into the endless loops of remembering and predicting. But if you can stay here, really stay, you'll start to notice something profound. The present moment is the only place life actually happens. The past is memory. The future is imagination. Only here is real. And in this here-ness, life feels different. A problem loses some of its weight because you're not holding it up with extra layers of meaning. A joy feels richer because you're not already running ahead to the next thing. The pace of life slows not because the world has slowed, but because you're no longer racing past it. Presence is also contagious. When you meet someone and you're truly there with them, not distracted, not waiting for your turn to speak, they feel it. It's rare in a world that's always rushing. Your presence gives them permission to arrive in their own moment. 2. Over time, living this way rewires you. It becomes harder to get pulled into the dramas of the mind. You still make plans, still remember, still dream, but you don't mistake those things for reality. You carry them lightly, because you know where life actually lives. And perhaps the most healing part of presence is this: it returns you to yourself, without the noise of all the what-ifs and should-haves. You can hear the quieter voice, the one that doesn't shout, but simply knows. You realize you don't need to chase some better version of yourself in the future. You don't need to keep rehearsing the past. You are already here, and here is enough. So, when life feels heavy, when your thoughts are pulling you in 100 directions, maybe try this stop. Feel the chair under you. Notice the sounds around you. Take one breath, not to calm yourself, but simply to meet this moment as it is, and let this moment meet you. Because in the end, presence is not something you practice. It's something you remember, and the remembering is what sets you free. 6. Work as a natural flow. There's a different quality to work when it's born from alignment rather than obligation. I didn't understand that for most of my life. For years, I treated work like a weight I had to carry up a hill every single day. Some days I carried it well. Other days I stumbled under it. But always, somewhere in the background, there was this silent belief: if I don't push hard enough, nothing will happen. And because of that belief, I did push. I worked longer hours than I needed to. I took on projects that drained me because they looked good to others. I said yes to things that my heart quietly whispered no to just so I could keep the wheel turning. Looking back, I can see that I was working against my own current, like a river trying to force itself uphill. I was exhausting my energy just to keep moving in a direction that wasn't mine. Something shifted the day I stopped asking, "How do I make this work?" and started asking, "What wants to move through me?" Work is not meant to be a cage we live inside. At its most alive, work is a channel, an opening through which consciousness expresses itself in form. When you're aligned with your own nature, the work you do becomes more than a list of tasks. It becomes a kind of conversation between you and life itself. I've had moments when I was doing something, writing, teaching, creating, where time seemed to dissolve. Hours passed like minutes. Ideas came faster than I could write them down. My body felt light, my mind clear. That's not just being in the zone. That's the river carrying you, instead of you forcing the current. When work flows this way, you don't have to use sheer willpower to get through the day. You still put in effort, but it's a different kind of effort. It's not about forcing, it's about allowing. The energy comes from inspiration, not from fear of falling behind. This doesn't mean every moment is bliss. Even the most aligned work will have challenges, but when you're in the right current, those challenges don't feel like dead ends. They feel like bends in the river, moments that require you to pay closer attention, to adjust your course, but never to abandon the journey. The truth is, many of us have been taught to distrust this kind of flow. We've been told that only struggle produces worth, that if something feels easy or joyful, it must not be real work. But life has its own economy, and in that economy, what is truly valuable often comes through the path of least resistance, not because you're avoiding effort, but because the effort you give is moving in harmony with where life wants to go. When you work from alignment, value becomes inevitable. You can't help but create something of worth, because it's an authentic extension of who you are. The painter who loses herself in color, the teacher who lights up when a student understands, the builder who hums while shaping wood. These people are not forcing value into existence. They are letting value pour through them. And here's something else I've learned. When you're flowing in your work, you stop competing in the way you used to. You're no longer trying to outrun or outshine others. Instead, you're simply deepening into your own lane, knowing that no one else can offer exactly what you can. The work becomes less about getting ahead and more about expressing what's inside you as fully as possible. There was a time when I thought this was just an idealistic dream, that only a lucky few could experience work this way. But the truth is, any work can become a natural flow when approached from the right place. It's not about the job title or the field you're in. It's about whether you're bringing your whole self to it. When you show up as yourself, without the constant pressure to prove or the fear of falling short, even ordinary tasks can take on a different energy. The way you answer an email, the way you greet someone at the door, the way you organize your space, all of it becomes infused with the quiet power of presence and authenticity. This is why people who work from their natural state often seem to have more to give. They're not draining themselves to meet someone else's definition of success. They're drawing from an endless source, their own connection to the field of consciousness. But here's an important truth: to find that flow, you sometimes have to let go of things that are no longer aligned. That might mean saying no to a project that doesn't feel right, even if it pays well. It might mean walking away from a role that looks stable on paper, but leaves your soul restless. Letting go can be scary, but it's in that release that the current can redirect you to where you're meant to be. Think of it like pruning a plant. You cut away what no longer serves growth, and in doing so, you make space for something stronger, healthier, more alive to emerge. And when you do find yourself in that current, when the work feels like a natural extension of your being, you begin to notice something beautiful. You're no longer counting the hours until it's over. You're no longer working for the weekend or waiting for retirement to finally live. You're already living, right in the middle of your work. In the end, work, as a natural flow, is not about finding the perfect job that never asks anything hard of you. It's about letting what you do be a mirror of who you are, and letting who you are be shaped and expanded by what you do. It's about entering the river, trusting its direction, and allowing it to carry you not away from yourself, but deeper into yourself. 7. The frequency of letting go. There's a certain kind of freedom that only arrives when you finally unclench your fists. For most of my life, I thought the way to get what I wanted was to hold on tighter, to plan more, work harder, push further. I believed that if I didn't keep my hands on the steering wheel at all times, life would spin out of control. But somewhere along the way, I learned something that changed me. Control is heavy. It's exhausting. And in the end, it's an illusion. Letting go is not the same as giving up. It's not about abandoning your dreams or refusing to care. It's about releasing the tension in your body and mind that comes from believing you can force the universe into your timeline, your shape, your exact design. When you loosen your grip, something remarkable happens. You become empty in the best possible way. Empty, like a vessel ready to be filled. Empty like a field, ready for planting. And in that emptiness, there's room for life to move, for the unexpected to arrive, for what's truly aligned to find its way to you. We often think we're helping ourselves by pushing, by insisting, by trying to bend reality to match the picture in our heads. But the energy of tight control is like building a wall around yourself. You might keep out some uncertainty, but you also keep out the flow. You block the very things you've been asking for. I've seen it in my own life, times when I obsessed over a goal, checking it from every angle, worrying it into exhaustion. And the harder I tried, the further away it seemed to move. Then, usually out of sheer fatigue, I would let it go. I'd stop trying to micromanage every detail. I'd breathe, and in that softer space, the thing I'd been chasing would appear sometimes in a way I never could have planned. It's as if the universe was waiting for me to step aside, so it could finally walk through the door. Letting go changes your frequency. When you're tense, your energy says, "I don't trust this yet." It says, "I'll relax only when I have proof." But when you release that tension, your energy says, "I already believe this will unfold as it should." And that frequency is magnetic. It draws in the experiences, people, and opportunities that resonate with trust, not fear. Think of a gardener planting seeds. If they dig them up every day to check if they're growing, they disturb the process. The seeds need darkness, patience, and time. In the same way, our intentions need space. They need us to trust the unseen work that's happening beneath the surface. Letting go is not passive. It's an active choice to shift from force to flow. It's a decision to stand in the river of life without trying to direct every ripple, knowing that the river already knows where it's going. Sometimes letting go means releasing a specific outcome you've been clinging to. Other times, it means loosening the grip on when or how it will happen. And sometimes, the hardest letting go is of the belief that your happiness depends on one exact thing unfolding. I've learned that when I'm holding on too tightly, I'm often holding on to a smaller vision than what life has in mind. Letting go feels scary because it asks us to step into the unknown. But that unknown is also where the greater possibilities live, the ones we couldn't see from inside our narrow plans. There's a quiet power in saying, "This," or something better. It's a way of telling life, "I'm open. I trust you to bring me not just what I think I want, but what will truly serve me." That openness shifts everything. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing something in order to feel whole is often the moment it arrives. Not because you've given up, but because you've stopped blocking it with the frequency of grasping. Your energy has moved from scarcity to sufficiency, from desperation to invitation. I remember once wanting a specific opportunity so badly that I could barely think of anything else. Saint follow-up after follow-up, replayed the scenario in my mind every night, convinced that if I didn't keep the pressure on, it would slip away. Eventually, I exhausted myself. I told myself, if it's mine, it will come. If not, something else will. The next week, the call came, not just offering me the opportunity, but offering it in a form that was far better than I had imagined. I sometimes wonder if that call could have come sooner, had I let go earlier, but then I realized the timing was perfect, because I needed to learn the lesson. Letting go is not losing, it's aligning. When you embody the frequency of letting go, life begins to feel lighter. You wake up with more space inside. You stop needing to check the horizon every 5 minutes. You start noticing beauty again, the kind that was always there. But hidden behind the fog of your constant effort, letting go is, at its heart, an act of trust. And trust is not blind. It's built on the lived truth that life has carried you here. Through all the days, you didn't think you could make it. It has woven meaning into moments you once thought were meaningless. It has surprised you with gifts you didn't even know to ask for. So maybe the next time you feel that tightness, that compulsion to control every angle, you could try loosening your grip just a little. Take one deep breath. Remind yourself, if this is truly mine, it will find me. If it isn't, I'm making space for what is. In that space, the best of what's meant for you can finally step forward. And it often will not because you chased it down, but because you invited it in with the frequency of letting go. 8. You are the anchor for others. There's a kind of strength that doesn't roar. It doesn't come from raising your voice, winning the argument, or proving a point. It comes from being so deeply rooted in your own being that your presence alone becomes a calm harbor for others. When you live in alignment with your true nature, you carry that stillness within you. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to convince anyone to feel it. People sense it in the way you listen without rushing to fix them. They see it in your eyes when you meet them without judgment. They hear it in the pauses between your words, where there's no hidden agenda, only space. I didn't understand this power for a long time. I thought that if I wanted to help someone, I needed to offer advice, solutions, or encouragement. I believed I had to do something. But over the years, I've seen that the most profound shifts often happen in the presence of someone who simply holds their ground in love and authenticity. Someone who doesn't get pulled into the storm, but quietly becomes the anchor in the middle of it. Being an anchor doesn't mean you're unaffected by life. You still feel the waves. You still have your own challenges and uncertainties, but you've learned how to return to center, even when the water gets rough. And it's from that center that you offer stability to others, not by holding them up yourself, but by reminding them they have the same center within them. I've had people tell me, when I'm around you, I just feel calmer. At first, I didn't know what to say. I wasn't trying to make them feel that way. But then I realized that's the point. You don't become an anchor by trying to be one. You become an anchor by living in a way that your own groundedness is genuine, not performed. It's like a tree. A tree doesn't stand still for the sake of the birds who land on its branches. It stands because that's its nature, to root deeply into the earth and reach steadily toward the light. The birds benefit from that stability, but the tree's stillness comes from simply being what it is. When you are rooted in who you are, others feel safe to set down their armor around you. They sense that they don't have to perform or impress. In that safety, something beautiful happens. They start to remember themselves. They remember what it feels like to breathe without pressure, to be seen without pretense, to belong without conditions. And you might notice something, too. People who are ready for this kind of remembering will naturally be drawn to you, not because you're trying to attract them, but because your frequency calls to theirs. It's resonance, one tuning fork, setting another into vibration. Of course, not everyone will be comfortable with your stillness. Some will prefer the noise, the rush, the familiar patterns of conflict. That's okay. Being an anchor doesn't mean holding on to everyone. It means holding steady for those who are ready to find their own center. There is a quiet responsibility in this role, not the kind that weighs you down, but the kind that asks you to keep tending to your own inner stability. You can't offer grounding if you've abandoned your own roots, so you keep showing up for yourself resting when you need to, being honest about what's true for you, saying no when something pulls you too far off center. I've seen how this works in the smallest moments. A conversation that could have spiraled into blame and defensiveness softens because one person, just one, chose to stay calm. A friend in crisis finds clarity not because you solved their problem, but because you sat with them long enough for their own clarity to rise to the surface. A child learns how to meet frustration without collapsing into it, simply because they've watched you do the same. This is the ripple effect of living as an anchor. You don't always see the ways your presence changes the room, but it does. Your steadiness helps others discover their own. And in a world where so many are tossed about by constant noise, distraction, and uncertainty, that steadiness is rare and deeply needed. Being the anchor is not about being perfect. You will have days when you're thrown off balance, but the more you live in your own truth, the more quickly you'll return to that steady place. And every time you do, you strengthen not only your own roots, but the field you're part of. Because here's the deeper truth. Your calm isn't just for you. The stability you embody becomes part of the collective field of consciousness. Each moment you choose not to be swept away, you make it easier for others. Sometimes people you'll never meet to do the same. You are contributing to a kind of invisible architecture that holds the possibility of peace in the world. And maybe that's the quiet legacy you leave behind. Not the titles or possessions, but the way people felt in your presence, the way they walked away a little lighter, a little clearer, a little more themselves. You may never fully know the impact you have simply by being who you are. But that's the beauty of being an anchor. You don't do it for recognition. You do it because it's your nature, because you've seen what happens when you live unshaken in your truth, and because you know the world needs more of that kind of stillness. So you keep standing, not rigid, but rooted, not to hold the world still, but to remind it that stillness exists, that in the middle of every storm, there is always a place to rest, and that place might just be you. 9. Creation without the gap. There is a kind of creation that feels heavy. It's the kind you do when you believe something is missing, when your life, as it is right now, doesn't feel like enough. You look at the present moment as a place you must escape from, and every dream becomes a rescue boat to somewhere better. I know that kind of creation well. I've lived it. I've sat at the desk, late into the night, chasing a vision that I thought would finally make me whole. I've carried the belief that if I could just finish this project, earn this amount, reach this milestone, then I could rest. But that way of creating always left me tired. And no matter what I achieved, the horizon only moved further away. When you create from lack, there's always a gap between where you are and where you want to be. You measure the distance every day, and the measuring itself becomes a burden. The very energy you pour into your creation carries a quiet tension, a subtle resistance to what is, and that tension becomes part of the thing you create. But something changes quietly, profoundly, when you begin to create from fullness, when you recognize that this moment, as it is already complete. When you stop treating your dreams as lifelines and start seeing them as invitations, in that space, the gap disappears. You're no longer creating to fix yourself, to prove yourself, or to escape your life. You're creating because life, in its fullness, wants to move through you in a new way. You're creating because it's in your nature to express, to explore, to see what happens next. It's like the difference between running to catch a train because you're late and strolling to the station because you want to watch the scenery along the way. One is fueled by urgency, the other by curiosity. When you create from fullness, there's no strain in the process. You still work, but it's not the grinding kind of work that leaves you hollow. It's the kind of work that feeds you as much as it produces something. You can spend hours in it and come away feeling more alive than when you began. And here's the beautiful paradox: when you no longer need your creation to fill a void, it often flourishes more easily. You're not trying to force it into existence before it's ready. You're not rushing the process to soothe your own discomfort. You're simply giving it space to unfold in its own timing, while you stay present to each step. I remember a time when I was writing something deeply personal. In the past, I would have measured every word against the imagined reaction of others. Will they like it? Will it be good enough? But this time, I wrote with no such weight. I wrote because I enjoyed the feel of the words taking shape, because I loved the way an idea could surprise me mid-sentence, because the act of writing itself was enough. And in the end, that piece reached people in a way my older, strained creations never did. This is what happens when you remove the gap. The creation carries the energy of wholeness. People can feel it, even if they can't explain why. It's like hearing music played not for applause, but for the joy of playing. There's a warmth in it, a sincerity that can't be faked. Creating without the gap also changes your relationship to results. When you create from lack, the outcome determines your worth. If it's a success, you can breathe for a while. If it fails, you fall back into the hole you were trying to climb out of. But when you create from fullness, the outcome is just one more expression of the moment you were already living fully. Success doesn't inflate you, and failure doesn't diminish you. You remain whole in both. And maybe that's the greatest freedom, to know that you don't have to wait for some future achievement to feel at peace, to feel alive, to feel like yourself. You can live that way now, and let your creations be an extension of the life you're already inhabiting. This doesn't mean you lose ambition. It means your ambition transforms. It's no longer about running from something, but about moving toward what calls to you. You're still reaching, but your reach comes from open hands, not clenched fists. When you create from fullness, you start to see every step as part of the gift. The planning, the experimenting, even the setbacks, they're all threads in the fabric of the experience. You stop trying to rush to the final product because you're not chasing an escape. You're exploring a landscape, and every view is worth pausing for. And here's the secret. This way of creating isn't just for artists, writers, or entrepreneurs. It's for anyone who's shaping a life, whether you're raising children, tending a garden, building a community, or cooking dinner for someone you love. In each case, you can approach it from the tension of lack or the ease of fullness, and that choice will change not only how it feels, but what it becomes. So maybe the question to ask before you begin is not, what do I want to create, but where am I creating from? If the answer is fear, pressure, or the need to prove, then maybe it's time to pause, to breathe, to remember that you are already standing on the ground you've been trying to reach. And from that ground, you can move not because you must, but because it's a joy to see what unfolds. When the gap disappears, creation becomes play, not the shallow play of distraction, but the deep play of a soul curious about its own possibilities. And in that play, you might discover that what you've been seeking all along was never the finished thing. It was the aliveness you feel when you let life express itself through you. Coming home to presence. The final test ends the moment you no longer need to pass it. It's strange, isn't it? You can spend years climbing a mountain, only to realize the summit was never somewhere out there. It was here, waiting for you to stop looking everywhere else. The long search, the striving, the constant sense of not yet all of it dissolves the moment you remember you are already what you've been seeking. And from here, the real journey begins. This is no longer a hunt for answers. It's the living embodiment of the answer itself. The theories you studied, the insights you wrote down in journals, the fleeting moments of clarity you tried to hold on to, they are no longer separate from you. They've settled into your bones. They've become the quiet rhythm of your life. You no longer need to prove yourself, because you understand that your worth was never in question. You no longer chase after the next breakthrough, because you've realized that the only thing worth chasing is the joy of simply being here. You live now as a bridge between science and spirit, not as two opposing realms, but as two languages describing the same truth, an infinite consciousness choosing to experience itself through this temporary human form every day. You stand before a choice. Sometimes it comes in big, obvious moments. The decision to speak honestly when it would be easier to hide. The choice to take a step forward, even when fear whispers stay small. Other times, it's subtle, the choice to pause and breathe before reacting, to soften your shoulders, to look into someone's eyes and actually see them. The choice is always the same. At its core, will you remember or will you forget? Will you embody? Or will you pretend? Will you live as what you are? Or will you play the role of who you think you should be? And here's the beauty: each time you choose to remember, each time you choose to be fully present in your truth, you do more than change your own life. You send a ripple into the collective field, a subtle but undeniable shift that makes it just a little easier for someone else to remember. 2. We are connected in ways we can't always see. Your presence in this moment touches more than the people you interact with. It touches the field we all share, the quiet web of consciousness that links every living thing. And when you choose to live authentically, to stand in your own wholeness, you add coherence to that field. You help the world remember what it has always known, but so often forgets: we are not broken. We are not separate. We are not lacking. We are already whole. Coming home doesn't mean life becomes a constant state of bliss. Storms will still pass through. Old fears may still visit. But the difference now is that you know where home is, and you know how to return to it. Home is not a brick and mortar place. It's not even a particular set of circumstances. Home is the steady ground of presence, the awareness that has been with you through every high and low, every success and loss, every moment of clarity and confusion. Home is here. In this breath, in the space between one thought and the next, in the way the light falls across the table, in the sound of your own heartbeat reminding you that you are alive. Now, when you live from this place, you stop asking life to prove something to you. You stop bargaining with the universe, promising to be worthy once this happens. Instead, you meet life as it is, knowing that what you are can never be added to or taken away from. And so, the real adventure begins. Not the adventure of collecting more knowledge, more status, more validation, but the adventure of living fully as what you already are. This is the exploration of how consciousness can love, create, heal, and connect through the shape of you. Some days, that will mean deep stillness. Other days, it will mean bold action. Both are expressions of the same truth. You will notice that you no longer divide life into spiritual and ordinary, because you see the sacred woven into every gesture, every interaction, every breath. The world around you may not change overnight, but your relationship to it will. You will see patterns where you once saw chaos. You will sense meaning where you once felt emptiness. You will trust the timing of your life more, because you will know that nothing real can be taken from you, and nothing meant for you can miss you. And perhaps the greatest gift is this: you will no longer be in a hurry to arrive. You will understand that arrival was never the point. Presence is, that the joy is not in crossing a finish line, but in feeling the earth beneath your feet with each step. So welcome home, not to a destination, but to yourself, not to a place that can be built or destroyed, but to the timeless awareness that has been quietly waiting for you to notice it. From here, you will still have choices. You will still be pulled, at times, toward forgetting. But each time you choose to remember, each time you choose to embody, to live truthfully, to stand in the wholeness that was always yours, you will be adding light to the shared field of all humanity. And in doing so, you will make it easier for the next person to find their way home. The final test is complete. The seeking ends here. The embodiment begins now.